Today I felt like making a video on applied Energistics 2 and mystical agriculture, specifically setting up subnets to keep your inventory nice and organized. If you're not familiar with subnets, maybe they sound confusing. Trust me, they're not. And that's kind of the goal of this video. How do we go from a bunch of drawers or a main network inventory that has everything in it to kind of more of an organized, partitioned subnet? I suspect I'm going to split the video into a few chapters, so keep a lookout for those. But for starters, we're going to have a quick look at kind of just a general system. This right here is kind of a basic AE2 system that I think most people have. You have a bit of a controller set up, creative power cell supplying energy. We have a wee bit of a drive here with a couple items in this one, not much in here, and we can see it. And we also have from functional storage a drawer controller that allows you to talk to all the different drawers. And of course, there is a storage bus here on the back that allows our network to see it. And then of course, over here is the farm. Now, ignore this stuff for now. That's going to be the future subnet. Without spending too much time looking at the farm, you can see it's not maybe the fastest design out there, but it's kind of a popular one. If you're interested in the blocks, we got fertilized farmland, we got a harvester, we got crop support for making the crops faster, grow faster. Same with the power generator for the growth accelerator. It's probably worth mentioning too, I'm playing all the mods 10, like version 4.4 for Minecraft 1.21. A lot of the stuff that I'm going to show here should work in older versions of Minecraft, like back to 1.12 10 years ago. There's a couple key differences. I'll try to point them out. So I like this harvester here because you can set it by a 9x9 area. You got water below it, which is growing your max plot size of a 9x9 crop. We got growth accelerators that make things super fast. I didn't put any in the middle here just so I could easily click on the harvester. There's a silent gear hoe, a stone one, that it breaks, but it keeps one durability, so it's kind of a bit of an exploit. It'll run indefinitely. But yeah, all it's doing is it's putting items into the ME interface. And I believe it's happening so fast you can't actually see anything. And if you didn't know, the ME interface is like an input-output. If we break this, we can see suddenly these items are pooling because they've got nowhere to go. It's kind of what I refer to when I say things clog, because if those drawers were to fill up and those drives were to fill up, this would clog until it had somewhere to put the items. So let's just grab this glowstone essence here and fix this. All the items are going to get put away here. And so that's kind of the input, right? But the ME interface also does output. You can set it to a max stack of 64 and it's going to keep a stack. And since we have a lot, then we can get rid of it like that. So that's a really useful block for interacting with your network, input and output. We'll come back to that kind of point later. So yeah, a real common setup here is a drawer, because early game, getting into AE2 is kind of costly. This is nice and cheap, wooden drawers. But what we want to do is we want to move all of that stuff to a subnetwork. So kind of the first thing I would recommend is set up your ME drives. Now I've got 2 of them here. I really only need 1 because I've decided to do 10 crop essences as an example, or sorry, 9. We have 9 plus a fertilizer as an extra that sometimes has a random chance of spawning. These 10 here, right? Notice they all are filtered to a type of essence. Now let's grab one of these. So you need to set these up first. We have a 64K storage cell with 1 type of gold essence and an overflow destruction card. Now it's worth noting in this version 1.21, this exists. I don't know when it was added. I know it didn't exist in 1.12. So if you need to avoid extra stuff, you have to do something slightly different. Now I'm not going to hook this up to my network, but a bit of a demonstration here. If you were playing on 1.12 or older, what you could do is take a trash can from a various, trash can mod. I think Extra Utilities had them back in the day, and a storage bus. What you could do is set a low priority, like lower than anything else, on your subnetwork. And it's important to do not build this on the main network. We're going to build this on the subnetwork you'll see later. This is kind of a bit of a side quest. It's really important that what you would do is you would whitelist every single one of your essences, and you want to make sure it's whitelisted. Otherwise, it'll treat the trash can as an infinite storage device, and it'll just put everything it can in there. And let's say you put capacity cards in and this whitelist here is still not big enough for all the stuff you want to do. Well, you would just add another one. But again, it's got to be whitelisted, otherwise it could trash everything. There's also a mod, or not a mod, a card called equal distribution that exists now that didn't back in the day. You could put this in here, and then you could put in gold, iron, osmium, copper, essence, and then it would divide, 64K by 4 item types. And what is that? 16K. But I would prefer to just have one per. I like that. And the design, works in older versions of Minecraft. So that's cool. You have to set that up for all your essences. And really, what is that going to be? Like 4 of these drives, like 40 cells max, something like that. So that's cool. We now have a place to put the items. We got 2 problems. We need to put the new stuff into the new system, but we got to put the old stuff from here and from here into here as well. So we're going to start by building the awesome subnet. I'm just realizing here the ME interface is a full block and I don't have a crafting. Oh, there's a crafting table right here. Let's make that the skinny guy. I like that. So the storage bus here is going to go onto the main network. Now, if you're not familiar with the storage bus, like what it's really doing, you know how you can put a chest on it, whatever. It lets you put items into it, lets you take items out of it. That's what it's doing with the storage controller from functional storage, the drawer mod. It's letting you put items in and take items out. It doesn't care what the inventory is as long as it's an inventory. So the cool thing with subnets is that's what you're basically doing. You're basically converting whatever you have going on over here. It's just one big chest. It doesn't matter what you got going on as long as it's valid and it follows the rules with AE2 and all that. It's a chest. It's a vanilla Minecraft chest as far as the storage bus is concerned. So that's how I like to remember which way to face them, because it does matter. The main network has the storage bus, which is looking at a big chest. And again, the ME interface is an input-output device. So it's basically exposing all of the items that are in this network. It's exposing them to whatever's over here. Okay? Now, I like to use a different color. It signifies to me at a glance that this is a subnet. Now notice this thing is full and it's offline because we have no power. So the basic principle with AE2 is data and energy. Now we have energy being generated here. We got, data happening here, and we have restricted data transfer happening here. The storage bus right now is bidirectional. We're going to change it later, probably to extract only. You can do insert, but I don't think in this case it makes sense. But for right now, we're going to leave it bidirectional, but it's kind of controlling the flow of data. But we have no energy, so none of these systems can run. Notice all the stuff's offline. That's where the quartz fiber comes in. It's got a really important job. All it does is pass energy. It does not pass data. So what we've done is we've kind of broke up how AE2 works. Instead of, this cable here passing energy and data, this is passing data, and this is passing energy. So that's all a subnet is just splitting it up. Now notice everything is online. Now another really interesting thing is the ME controller. I'm sure most people know, but there's rules with these. You can't make them, too big. I'm not going to go over the rules. That's for another video of somebody else on YouTube. But notice you can't do that. You can't have a split network like the ME controllers. But if this is a network, you could go over here because this is a whole other network the way we have it set up. So you could do this. Now, the reason you might do that, if you're wondering, is if we just leave it like this, this is what's known as an ad hoc network. If it doesn't have a controller, it's ad hoc. All right, that was weird. My game just tiled down, but I was saying this is an ad hoc network. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 devices. So there's 4 channels being used. Let's say we were doing something where we needed more channels. We had a lot of stuff going on, which I might show at the end of the video. We put a controller on here. Suddenly we have 32 channels per face, right? That's the rules. Look them up. So that's how easy it is to just make a subnetwork big, because You do something like that, and then all of a sudden, it doesn't really matter how small this main controller is. You could have a whole bunch of nonsense going on here, like, hundreds of channels. And as far as your main network's concerned, that storage bus is one channel. So that's a really cool way to get around the limitation some people feel that exists with AE2. I don't think so. I think it's great. Cool. So now we are putting items, it looks like they're slowly trickling in. We can see there's 140 gold essence because I guess it's just kind of the closest thing to the interface. We haven't tweaked really any of the priorities, except maybe this storage bus is still at -1 because I was trying to force them to go into this system. But overall now, what we've done is we've made a mess. We have items there, we have items there, and we have items in the new subnet. Because everything that this thing makes, it's going to put them in here, and that's the only place it can put them, because the ME interface is not going to pass the items that way. Maybe I'll try to explain that again here. So the storage bus with this configuration is bidirectional. So when you're looking at this terminal, you can pull items out and you can put items in to that network depending on your priority setup. I'd have to think about that for a second. If we'd set this priority to 1,000, for sure, this priority's at 0. So anything we pull out of here and we put it back in, it's going to go into that network. Now, we're going to change that later, but for now, let's just dial this back down. We need to get this stuff into there. So that's funny. I'm going to put that back at 1,000. That's our preferred network. So everything getting harvested is going into here because it can't go that way. But this stuff now needs to get moved into here. Now, how do we do that elegantly? Well, let's just start breaking stuff in creative mode. Now, if we put an import bus here instead of a storage bus with max accelerations, we are going to see that it's going to quickly suck out all these items. And it's going to put them into the storage bus because this one has the highest priority. And there's room. That's key, right? So we click on here, we will see that we're now in the hundreds. Very cool. And this one was never set up. Grab a linking tool, click on the drawer controller, click on this that got forgotten, and then it quickly empties out. Vein mine that away, break that. Alrighty, we are off to a good start here. The drawers are cleaned up. Now we just got to clean up the ME drive. Well, that one's actually pretty easy. There's an ME IO port and it uses a channel. Notice we've got 3 channels here. We put it down, we're using 4. So this thing, what you want to do is you want to put in acceleration cards and then you want to grab your drives. This one's empty, but I'm going to grab it anyways because it would possibly fill up by accident. We do that. It shift clicked in here. It was empty. It put it here because we were transferring data into the network. And then this thing transferred whatever it could to the only available inventory. Now that's key. It transferred whatever it could out of this cell wherever there was room. But we've set up our network in such a way where it's very bottlenecked. It can only put items in to whatever's partitioned right there. And again, that's really key why with that trash can I was talking about for different versions, you don't want to, you need a whitelist. Otherwise, it would just have trashed all of the diamond tools, grass blocks, that kind of stuff. So that's cool. Now, if we put this back here and we break this, suddenly our main network is nice and clean. Everything that was in essence that could fit in those partition drives is now nicely sorted. And now that this storage bus has done its job of putting items into the subnet, we are actually going to put it on extract only. So now I only actually want to pull items out. I never want to try to push items in. And the main reason for that, again, is because I have overflow destruction upgrades. It'll avoid, whatever it doesn't, whatever it can't fit. So it just doesn't make sense to me. Eventually this is going to fill up. We don't need to be trying to put stuff into a full network. Now, if we grab this crafting terminal, we slap it down here. See how nice that is? Purple or Fluix and green. So now when we look at this, it is only the essences. It's nice and organized, but if we come to our main network, we see everything, we can use everything. Just keep in mind when you take this out, you cannot put it back in. It will go in, but it's going to end up in this drive. It's not going to go back in there. That's fine. I'm going to show autocrafting here in a bit. that's going to kind of handle that. So hopefully you don't ever have to do that. A lot of people will use wireless crafting terminals. You set them up on your main network, and it would be just like this. Your wireless crafting terminal on the main Fluix network can see everything. All right, time for the Autocrafting now. So that's all nice and good, but we don't want to have to, need gold and say, grab it here, craft it like that. That's kind of annoying, right? We want to have all this stuff kind of converted into useful items. So as you use the useful items, like the gold, it'll automatically restock that. So I'm going to show what I think is kind of common, and then I'll show later what I prefer. So somebody might have, a bunch of crafting CPUs much bigger than this, much more organized than this, but and in the molecular assembler and the pattern provider. Now, if you're using versions older than, I don't know, when this was introduced, like 1.12 used to use this ME interface to do the input, the input and output. I don't know what I tried to say there, as well as pushing patterns, but now it's strictly just an input-output device. The pattern provider is now what pushes patterns. So I like to use yellow cables for some reason, and I've started doing this a while ago, but we have a encoding terminal and then the accessor, which I think has a different name in older versions. So let's make two recipes here. I happen to know gold doesn't look like that. It looks like that. And then let's do iron, I suppose. And it's important too, I know some people will put substitutions on all the time. It's really, I think, best practice to leave it off unless you have to turn it on. There's certain reasons you want it on, but it's best just to leave it off unless you need it. Now, of course, we can put the items in here. I guess we can't shift click them. We got to actually put them in. And since the network's very simple, that molecular assembler is this guy here, right? Same thing. Just convenience if it's really far away, because networks can be huge. So if we come here now, somebody can do something like this where they say, make me 100 of those, and that's fine. But the problem is now if the player wanted to do this, there's no CPU available. It's being used right now. Of course, what you can do is make it bigger, right? Make more of them. And also in this version, is it this one? Yes, the crafting CPU. You can have it for just players, like just you, or just automation, which is kind of what we're doing, or both. Now, I think it's good practice in these newer versions to have a couple that are just for the player. So if you need to automate something, you're out adventuring, you got your wireless crafting terminal, you can auto-craft stuff if you need it. You don't want your base to be taking up all the CPUs. But this feature did not exist in older versions. So what I started doing, and what I still like, is actually putting this setup on the subnet. So not only does it actually free up channels, because look at this, we are using 8 channels. If we break this, instead of using 8 channels, we're using 6. Now that might not seem like a lot, but that's only one setup. If you have a bunch of them, then it kind of is a lot. So if we come here and then we set up kind of a real primitive whatever, we put the patterns back in. That's cool. And then I suppose we also are going to want some crafting CPUs here. Obviously, I'm not making anything efficient, right? It's all kind of just a demonstration. But check this out. How many channels are we using right now? We're using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I believe, and then 7. Yes, because everything's still online, right? Now, if I was to do 8 and then 9, notice missing channel. So this network, everything is offline here. In the tooltip there in the top middle, device missing channel. Because we're asking for 9 channels, but an ad hoc network can only support 8. That's where the subnet is sweet, because it lets you have a whole other ME controller, because it's a different network. Network A, the main one, network B, the mystical egg farm. And of course, you don't have to stop at just a small thing, right? You could have a subnet that is actually bigger than the main network. You're just kind of controlling the direction of data, right? This is like the master. It's allowed to, depending on your settings here, input or output whatever it wants. This thing kind of just exists as one large chest or one large system. So let's break those. We can leave that as overkill. So that's cool. But here's the problem now. If you're familiar with it, you might already see what the problem is. But let's say I ask for 100 gold now, right? Where is it? It's crafting, but what's going on? It's not in here. And then notice if we come over here, that number, there's no plus sign, so we can no longer middle click. Can I just delete this? Yeah, so the gold's gone. There's no recipe. This network cannot see this crafting stuff because it is over here. It's a nice way to isolate it. And where's those ingots though? They are stuck in, I guess, the return of the pattern provider because they have nowhere to go. So that's kind of a problem, but there's a fix. What you want to do is not have it set up so you're having to manually initiate stuff, right? What you want to do is have, and again, color doesn't matter. It's just really helpful, I find, for isolation. A lot of times my farms will be green, and you know, every color to me kind of has a purpose. Now remember how we used the storage bus and the interface here for a little trick? Well, there's another little trick that's popular, and by no means am I, by making this video, implying I made this stuff. I've learned it over from many people over the years. I'm just trying to consolidate some tricks because I think they're really cool. If you take an ME interface, remember it's an input-output. We want a gold ingot. If we tell this ME interface, we want you to deliver gold ingots. Well, it's going to try. But remember, there is no room for stuff that's not partitioned as such. So what we're going to do is we are going to have the ME interface, and do we have a crafting card? We grab a crafting card and we put it here. And now the ME interface is told, hey, craft stuff if you need to. And that's what it's going to do because it knows about the patterns and it knows about the CPU, so it can do it. And what that does is it immediately ties up your main, it frees up rather your main network. So you can have CPUs in your main network that's kind of for you, the player, but you could have a whole other subsystem that's whole job is to convert the essence into useful items, and you don't even have to worry about it. You don't see it, it's isolated. Now those items are here. Well, how do you access those items? Well, there's a trick that's existed since probably AE2 was ever a thing. If you put a storage bus on that interface, you can of course see it, right? Now it's really important too on this interface here to not have stuff. I think that breaks kind of the subnet, if I remember correctly. Don't quote me on this. But you want to keep this one free because if you start doing weird stuff, I think it kind of breaks the subnet functionality. I hope that's true information. But that's kind of a slightly different setup than we're doing here. So if we do that, all of a sudden this storage bus can see, and we're not going to worry about changing any settings here. It can suddenly see the inventory here. And I think what's happening is when I put gold there, it's looking at the slots, but when you have no items in there, it's kind of looking at everything behind the ME interface, if that makes sense, I hope. So if we come here, we can suddenly see, hey, there's a stack of gold, but notice it's going to be like a max stack. I think what might happen, what happens if we ask for more? Where's it going to go? Is it going to get stuck? Yeah. So see, that's kind of not what we want either. But if we weren't messing around in there and we didn't actually do that, let's delete it. We come here and look at that. There's gold. Oh, look at that. It's refilling automatically. So we just take it again. So that's pretty sweet, right? We can see a bunch of stuff's happening. Notice too, we have no acceleration cards in these assemblers. Most of them are empty. You can speed them up. You can make them fast. You can make, more of this because again, we all of a sudden made a ton of channels. We don't have, just these 8 channels. We have 32. Boom. So you could extend that out. Bam, massive. And of course you can make a bunch of these because what do we have here? We've got 32 channels. 2 are being used for this setup. We just keep duplicating that. So you all of a sudden have, you could have this all gold and it's going to achieve that. It's not really efficient, right? But it's possible. There's one modded block that I'm going to talk about just because I think it's really cool. The ME Oversized interface. Now, up until now, everything I've kind of talked about is kind of core AE2. I'm not really using add-ons. I know there's actually blocks. I think it's called the requester. it's probably doing the same functionality that I'm kind of showing here, but again, it's from a different mod. I'm trying to show just base AE2 stuff up until this point. We're going to look at the oversized interface from ExtendedAE. ExtendedAE. It's a weird thing to say. Okay, storage bus, boom. Okay, so that's cool. So we are now using 4 channels. So what you could do here is the same idea. Grab a card and boom. And then what we could do now is we have another recipe called iron ingots, right? Boom. But this thing lets you do 1024. So again, gold and iron recipes might be fighting each other, but all you do is make that bigger. You got lots of channels. Everything's cool. But this system is pretty sweet because it's going to start keeping, you know, whoops. I wish I didn't. And I guess you can't pull these out. You can pull those out from, oh, where are they going? What did I just break here? So because that's missing, we can't actually see it. The system seems like it's confused. Let's try to fix that, not do that again. 1000. Something like that. And then now that there's items in there and it's filtered properly, we can see them. So notice with this in all the mods 10 with ExtendedAE, we can all of a sudden have, you know, 9 slots of 1000. We got 9000 iron. You know, we could do gold. See how it's doubled up versus the base one here only has 9 slots. We have 18. So it's huge. And again, you know, we got tons of channels. We could do this setup for easily all those seeds, right? You just keep adding controllers and channels and all that. Of course, this being all the mods 10 means there's better ways to do that. I wish I didn't do this. So that's all cool. But what if you're playing 1.12 or 1.7, you know, Project Ozone 2 like I was playing last year? Well, I ran into this and I wanted a solution. So I thought, again, this is not something I am claiming to invent. It's just something that I don't see done very often. So I wanted to make a video, I guess, trying to show it off because I think it's a pretty neat design. And it's worth mentioning too, what is it, the Matrix, ExtendedAE. There's all kinds of crazy stuff you can do with AE add-ons. There used to be back in the day like lazy AE2 and all that. I never played with that stuff much. I really always enjoyed core AE2 mechanics. So that's kind of the goal or the scope of this this video. It's definitely not trying to say, you know, this way's the best. It's just what I like doing, what I think works pretty cool. Let's say you needed more, or you didn't like doing that storage bus interface setup, and you wanted millions. Well, what I started doing in Project Ozone 2 a while ago was export buses on the interface. Now this is kind of interesting, I think. So let's just set this up here. Notice we're using green, so it's on the subnetwork. However, the interface is going to be on the main network because remember, if we start exporting recipes into here, there's no valid storage because we've partitioned this stuff to only have essences. So we can't start making gold and expecting it to go, you know, into here, right? It's only accessible from here. And I guess all the gold's missing because we broke all that stuff. That's fine. What we're going to do is we're going to set up an export bus into an interface, and you can maybe fit more on. I've always liked doing groups of 3 because it just worked better, but maybe somebody else has got a better idea of a pattern. So we're going to need redstone cards and crafting cards. So let's set up ingots. Let's set up a gold. Now this export bus looks a lot different than the older one. There's a lot more room, but that's okay. So we want to have redstone control and we want to have a crafting card. So we want to have the redstone mode to only craft with a signal. Craft when it's redstone high. That's my preferred way. I consider it fail-safe. And the crafting behavior, we don't want to use stocked items that it already has. It may be okay in this circumstance, but kind of as a general rule, I don't want to use stocked items. It might recursively do something, or we want to make new items. We don't want to use stock stuff. We want to take essence from here, export it as a golden ingot into here so it ends up over there is kind of the flow. So we're exporting gold ingots. If it can't, you know, it's going to craft it because it has this card. Well, look at that. There's a pattern over here. There's lots of essence. It's going to do it. But it's only going to do it if the redstone's high. This is not going to work, but again, it is a demonstration of what not to do. So right now, if we put gold here and we say, hey, you know, 10 gold, right? This has to be Levels are above. Okay, when levels are below, if we've got less than 10 gold, emit high. And, okay, it's very slowly making them. See that, how that just went up there? Now that's because we didn't put acceleration cards in the export bus. Now it'll try to do a bigger craft. See how that's much faster? But again, it's got nowhere to put these items because this interface is actually offline. It's not doing anything. It's acting as kind of a bit of a, you know, weak chest, right? Well, that's where this comes in. We will just do a real bad job of running a cable. Function over form, right? All those items immediately got put into here because there's tons of room. Here's the problem. We've got 600 gold there, and we're saying, hey, emit when they're below 10. Why doesn't it know? Because the level emitter's on the wrong network. So we actually have to get rid of that and do kind of something like this. Now what we've done here is a huge mistake. Where is the emitter? Level emitter. See how everything's red? It's because we've accidentally now just tied our networks together, because Fluix will always, you know, connect with a colored network. You could use a different, you know, color, like yellow and green aren't going to connect, but Fluix connects with everything. I just want to do that. So this emitter is now controlling the export bus. We need gold. Gold is going to go there. We are going to emit when the levels are below, and let's do 1,000. So right now it's off. So it must have over 1,000 gold. And look at that, it does. But does it have over 1,100? It doesn't, because it's on. We can see it kicks on and it's going to start making gold. So that's very cool. Now, of course, I think I mentioned this already, right? But you can jam these full of acceleration cards. I think you can put on, you know, co-processors. You can build, you know, you can optimize your CPU. That's kind of the general case study. So over here, same kind of thing. We broke the network. Let's put iron ingot. The other thing that we taught it to do when levels are below. And we got to see how we got to kind of teach everything though. It's fine. It just requires a little bit of setup, but I think it's worth it. So there, shouldn't have clicked that. Active with signal. Do not use stocked items and export to first. So hopefully that's going to be making iron, and it doesn't seem to be. So what is going on? And why are those stuck there? Was that a different weird example that I did? Okay, that's weird. I don't know if it was because that iron was stuck in there, but I just noted it's counting up. Maybe I was impatient and it was just too slow, but there we go. And again, you know, you crank a few acceleration cards in, it's all of a sudden doing it faster, right? Obviously now what a person could do is say, hey, you know what? That's not enough. We will actually want to have 2 million, you know, 3 zeros, 3 more zeros, and then now we're going to be making gold for a while. And as long as you got valid space, you know, to put it, you can use it. The main bottleneck now is going to be, is my farm fast enough? And I know it's not, but yeah, I think it's kind of a cool design. Just as a general concept, you know, it can be optimized and improved and all that, but I think it's a really interesting way to have, you know, data and energy flowing around isolated. I just realized I forgot a really important concept. If you're auto-crafting on this subnet here, the green one, is missing items because it needs them from the purple, the main net, there'll be an issue. So we got a solution here. The particular craft I'm going to use for this example, I think, will be the water bucket, because we've got water essence. You combine it with a bucket, and there we go. So what I've done to demonstrate this, let's say our main net here has its own auto crafting system that we use for specific things. Like let's say we want to have a system that, you know, makes buckets, because we already have the subnet handling keeping a nice amount of iron, but we want to occasionally ask for, you know, buckets to get made, right? So it deserves its own network, and they're nice and separate. They're not going to be fighting each other for resources, so that's cool. However, those buckets only exist here. Those buckets do not exist here. So if I make a recipe here for, let's try to type water, hit R on the bucket, this button. So if we make this pattern and we go and we stick it over here, and I've already set up one of these small scale interfaces. I feel like this is a good example to, you know, demonstrate. Now, this is a one stack thing, so can you do, no, okay. And then of course we're gonna need a card, a crafting card, and this system is gonna try and make buckets of water, but it can't because it's missing the bucket, right? No bucket in here because it's over here. So how do we share resources? Because the whole point of isolating this was to not have them connected. Well, this is where I will use a interface. However, in this case, I like to use the big interface. And maybe you'll see why here shortly. This, now you gotta be very careful when you lay this out to not break what we got going on. But see how this one, you know, is a storage bus to interface because it's looking at all this as a chest, you know, from the storage bus's perspective. This is now the inverse. Now what we could do though, is we could serve up buckets. And buckets happen to stack, I guess, to 16, right? So now all of a sudden, this storage bus, we can leave this unchanged. It's going to know, hey, we keep 16 buckets there. Now, obviously, if that is not enough, whoops, you could probably do this, right? Again, you know, there's better ways to do this, but this is just kind of a explanation, right? You could have several of these, yada, yada, yada. This would be a good example of using the oversized interface. But at that point, you could probably use the ME requester add-on. Anyways, we're only seeing 4. Now that is actually something. Oh, we're only seeing 4 because we forgot to put a card. That's funny. There's always a reason. That's the one thing I really like. It's one thing I really like about Applied Energistics 2. Where's the crafting thing? If it doesn't work, it's because you probably did something wrong. Now I'm seeing items blinking in. Okay. I just made a grand mistake here. I saw items blinking in, that water essence, and that is because, did we stick? No, we made a water essence, and of course I forgot to plug it in to here. It's a new seed. So what's happening, of course, our storage bus is putting stuff into the interface as it should, right? This is where we got to be careful. Now, we want to extract in this case. It was inserting the water, so we want to only extract. So to easily solve this problem, I am going to look at this and grab it like that. Now, of course, you could run those drives through this again and kind of resort them and force them in, but this is just kind of my quick fix. So we're connected again. We've made a bunch of buckets. Life is good. We stick those in here. And now, I guess if we look at this terminal, we can grab a bucket of water and then it's going to start making them. Now, I guess in this instance, having a bucket of water is kind of annoying. I keep clicking on the wrong one because there's not that many, right? But you know, you could do something like this. Bucket of water is probably a bad example, but you get the idea. I think there's some types of essences out there that require an item that's not an essence, so you might have to feed it into the network, make it available for crafting as such. I've also done subnets where you have ore processing. Like let's say I have a subnet that's whole job is to have ores and you want to process them and cook them however you want to do them. Well, sometimes you want to feed in catalysts, things that, you know, increase the efficiency, like in the SAG mill. You could pass in these catalysts through a system like this, if that makes sense. Alrighty, I guess that kind of wraps it up. If you have any questions, let me know. I kind of tried my best to make it easy to understand, but the problem with AE2 is there's so much you can do, and you feel like if you don't mention it, it's a wasted opportunity. It's a really fun system just to design and sink a lot of time into.